So continuing on under pharmacy operations, so the DEA controlled substances inventory is the next section. Page 18. Before opening a new pharmacy, there has to be a complete inventory of all controlled substances. If there is no stock of controlled substances on hand, the record would obviously show a zero inventory. For regular inventories, the pharmacy needs to record the controlled substances currently on hand. The federal requirement is to conduct an inventory of all controlled substances, Schedules 2 through 5, on a biennial basis, which is every 2 years. The California requirement is to conduct a Schedule 2 inventory at least every 3 months, quarterly. In addition to the quarterly inventory, a new pharmacist in charge, or PIC, must complete an inventory within 30 days of being newly appointed. It is recommended that the outgoing PIC also conduct an inventory. The inventory requires a physical count, not an estimate, of all Schedule 2 controlled substances. The biennial federal inventory can count as one of the state inventories for the year in which it was taken. A review of all acquisitions and dispositions. This means that all Schedule 2 drugs that came into the pharmacy, for example, from the wholesaler deliveries, and all that went out as prescriptions and sales to other pharmacies or clinics, should be compared to see if the current inventory count corresponds correctly. If it doesn't, the cause of any discrepancies needs to be identified. Pharmacies need to maintain inventory records at each location. Hospital pharmacies must conduct an inventory within the pharmacy and then complete a separate report for each satellite location. The inventory records of Schedule 2 drugs must be kept separate from all other controlled substances. There is no requirement to submit a copy of the inventory to the DEA. If the pharmacist suspects a loss, an inventory needs to be performed as soon as possible to confirm the loss. Losses and known causes must be reported to the board within 30 days of discovery. And also it has to be within 14 days if theft, self-use, or diversion by a board licensee is actually the cause. If the cause is unknown, the pharmacy must further investigate to then identify and take corrective actions to prevent additional losses. Identify inventory is counted at either the beginning or close of business. Inventory is not performed during business hours because it would obviously fluctuate as the medications are dispensed. The records must be in a written, typewritten, or printed format. Inventory taken with a recording device must be reduced to writing promptly. The final form must be on paper and must contain date of the inventory and when it was taken. For example, at the beginning or close of business. Names of controlled substances, the dosage form, and the strength. Number of the dosage units or volume in each container. Number of commercial containers. If a drug becomes scheduled or changes schedules, pharmacies must inventory newly scheduled drugs on the date the scheduling became effective. When conducting an inventory of controlled substances, counting should be performed as follows. For sealed, unopened containers of all controlled substances, an exact count is needed. There is no need to open a sealed container. Use the count listed on the manufacturer's drug container. For any open containers of controlled substances, they require an exact count. Schedules 3 through 5 containers that hold 1,000 dosage units or less could be estimated. Schedule 3 through 5 containers that hold more than 1,000 dosage units require an exact count. The inventory records must be kept available for inspection for 3 years. If the records become excessive, like if it's a high volume store, the board could grant a waiver to allow for off-site storage of records. All records stored off-site must be kept in a secure area to prevent any unauthorized access. For example, at a records maintenance facility or at a commercial storage center. The waiver has to be kept in the pharmacy. If the waiver for off-site storage of records is approved, then a signed copy of the form will be returned to the pharmacy within 30 days. Off-site storage of records is not allowed until the board approves the waiver. A new waiver is needed if the records are moved to a different location. The pharmacy must be able to produce the records within 2 business days upon request of the board or another authorized officer of the law. Prescription records are kept for 3 years total. Prescriptions for non-controlled substances must be kept at the pharmacy for at least 1 year. After that, the pharmacy can choose to store the prescription off-site for another 2 years. This is often done because there is not enough room in the pharmacy to keep all of this paperwork. After 3 years have passed since the prescription was last dispensed, the pharmacy can dispose of the prescription, although many pharmacies choose to keep them longer. Prescriptions for controlled substances must be kept at the pharmacy for at least 2 years. After that, the pharmacy can choose to store the prescriptions off-site for even another year. Order requirements for supplying and billing durable medical equipment, page 20. So DME, which is durable medical equipment, is provided under Medicare Part B if the equipment was prescribed for use in the home. So some DME examples would include a glucometer, test strips, lancets, nebulizers, nebulized drugs, CPAP machines, prosthetics, orthotics, ostomy supplies, walkers, scooters, canes, commode seats. So initially, the durable medical equipment supplier, like a pharmacy, receives a verbal or written dispensing order for the product that the patient needs. So that's usually like in the home care section. Verbal or written dispensing orders can be used to provide the durable medical equipment, but then they cannot be used to bill Medicare. Billing requires a detailed written order or a DWO. The DWO must include the prescriber's signature and the date. It must contain the same information as a dispensing order with the addition of date, signature, detailed description of the item, such as a brand name and a model number. Only supplies that are clearly related to the order can be added to the detailed written order or the DWO by the supplier. Medicare does not accept PRN refills, so you can't just refill whenever you want. Refills must be detailed with the rest of the order. So the detailed written order or DWO has to include the item or items, any dosage or concentration if applicable, the route of administration, the frequency of use, for example, if it's for test strips and lancets, the duration of infusion if applicable, like if it's a nebulized medication, and the quantity, number of refills. So here's a case example. We have an 83-year-old female patient who has Medicare. Let's call her MO. MO's physician's office calls the pharmacy. They order a glucometer with the necessary supplies. The pharmacy fills and dispenses the order. The pharmacy can now create the DWO, the detailed written order, with the items provided. So the glucometer, the test strips, the lancets, the calibration solution, the battery, the lancing device, the lancets. This DWO is sent to the physician for the signature. The supplier is not permitted to add other items to the order that are not clearly related to this primary item that's ordered. So MO's pharmacy has to keep the original verbal dispensing order, the written order, and a copy of the completed DWO. When the pharmacy has both, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, CMS, can then be billed for the durable medical equipment. The next topic looks at drug pedigrees, still on page 20 of the 8th edition book. There is an increasing prevalence of counterfeit, misbranded, adulterated, and diverted prescription drugs in the United States. So to prevent these drugs from entering the legitimate drug supply, the Federal Drug Supply Chain Security Act, the DSCSA, was passed in 2013. The DSCSA outlines steps to build a system to track and trace drugs as they are distributed within the United States. This requirement applies to prescription drugs intended for human use. Many products are exempt, including over-the-counter drugs, veterinary drugs, active pharmaceutical ingredients, blood products for transfusion, radioactive drugs, drugs used in imaging studies, certain intravenous products, certain medical gases like oxygen, homeopathic drugs, and compounded preparations. Manufacturers, wholesale distributors, pharmacies, and repackagers, collectively referred to as trading partners, are required to provide the subsequent purchaser with product tracing information when engaging in transactions involving certain prescription drugs. Anytime the drug is moved from one place to another, paperwork has to follow. Pharmacies must be able to capture and maintain transaction information, transaction history, transaction statements in paper or electronic forms for each drug product received for 6 years from the date of the transaction. There are some situations that are exempt from this requirement. This includes dispensing drugs to a patient, providing drugs to a practitioner for use in their office, and distributing samples. So let's take a look at terms and some definitions. So TH, transaction history. Definition: statement which includes the transaction information for each prior transaction going back to the manufacturer of the product. Transaction information, or TI. This can include proprietary or established name or names of the product, strength and dosage form of the product, NDC, which is the National Drug Code number of the product, the container size, the number of containers, the lot number of the product, the date of the transaction, the date of the shipment, if more than 24 hours after the date of the transaction. This can include business name and address of the person from whom ownership is being transferred. This can include business name and address of the person. That's redundant. It's a typo, I think. Oh, okay. Business name and address of the person to whom ownership is being transferred. So, from or to. All right, the TS, which is the transaction statement. This is a statement that the entity transferring ownership in a transaction. So this statement would show that the transaction is authorized, that the transaction statement shows that the entity transferring ownership received the product from a person that is authorized, received transaction information in a transaction statement from the prior owner of the product, did not knowingly ship a suspect or illegitimate product, had systems and processes in place to comply with verification requirements, did not knowingly provide false transaction information, and did not knowingly alter the transaction history. Page 22 is going to look at delivery of the drugs to the pharmacy. Drugs and devices are only delivered to the licensed premises and signed for and received by a pharmacist. Deliveries to a hospital pharmacy can be made to a central receiving location within the hospital. However, the drugs or devices must be delivered to the licensed pharmacy premises within 1 working day following the delivery, and the pharmacist on duty at that time must immediately inventory the drugs or devices. A pharmacy can take delivery of drugs and devices when the pharmacy is closed and no pharmacist is on duty if all of the following requirements are met. So the drugs and devices are placed in a secure storage facility in the same building as the pharmacy. Only the PIC or pharmacist designated by the PIC can access the secure storage facility after the drugs or devices have been delivered. The secure storage facility has a means of indicating whether it has been entered after the drugs or devices were delivered. The pharmacy keeps written policies and procedures for the delivery of drugs, devices to secure storage facility. The agent delivering drugs and devices leaves documents indicating the name and the amount of each drug and device delivered. And lastly, the pharmacy is responsible for the drugs and devices and for keeping records related to the delivery of the drugs and devices. Drugs that are adulterated, misbranded, or expired cannot be purchased, traded, sold, or transferred. Adulteration involves the drug itself and the quality. The misbranding involves incorrect or missing information, which would be on the label. The drug stock must be kept clean. It has to be orderly, properly stored, properly labeled, and in date, which means not expired. And we do want to make another reminder that a medication could be both adulterated and misbranded. So for example, a bottle of levothyroxine tablets that are labeled as 100 micrograms but are actually only 50 micrograms would be considered adulterated because the strength is lower than the standard, and then the product is falsely labeled, so then it would also be misbranded. So here's some more descriptions about adulteration. So adulteration would be filthy, putrid, or decomposed, prepared or stored in unsanitary conditions, contaminated, lack of quality controls or purity testing. The drug is recognized in official compendia, but its strength is different from the official standards, or the purity or quality is lower than the official standards. Additionally, the drug is not recognized in official compendia, and its strength is different from that listed on the label, or the purity or quality is lower than that listed on the label. Here's an example, a bunch of examples actually. So a vaccine which has to be stored in the freezer was erroneously stored in the refrigerator for the past week. That would mean it became it decomposed and is no longer usable. Vials of injectable pain medication are found to contain glass shards, so it's not prepared properly, and what's this last one here? A manufacturer does not perform adequate sterility tests before distributing an IV drug. So that would make it adulterated because we actually then don't know what the true strength, purity, or quality is of the medication. When looking at misbranding, again, misbranding is about labeling. So this could be lack of required information on the package and in the labeling or information, which could be illegible. So which means we had lack of required information on the package, and we could not actually read the label. It was illegible. There could also be false or misleading information where a product is imitating another drug or promising to be a false cure. That could be considered misbranded. There could be special precautions which are needed to prevent decomposition, which are not listed. So for example, we want to protect it from light. Again, another misbranded description would be improper packaging, such as lack of poison prevention packaging or incomplete labeling of additives, packaging that does not contain the proprietary or branded or established common name, manufacturer or distributor, and business location. And another situation would be of misbranding would be where the ingredients differ from the standard of strength, quality, or purity as determined by the test laid in the USP monograph. So here's some examples. An herbal product claims that it cures cancer. A product's labeling does not include information about risk in pregnancy. An oral contraceptive product is dispensed without the required patient package insert. So moving on to the bottom of page 23. Monthly inspection of the drug supply. So the hospital drug supply must be inspected by a pharmacist, an intern, or a pharm tech at least every 30 days. This includes automated dispensing systems, the refrigerators, the freezers, and emergency supply stock. The inspection has to include removing any outdated, unusable, or adulterated, recalled, and mislabeled or misbranded drugs. Look-alike, sound-alike drugs should not be stored close to each other. Records of inspections must be kept for at least 3 years. Irregularities have to be reported to the board within 24 hours. Irregularities must be reported within 24 hours to the PIC, the pharmacist in charge, and the director or the CEO, the chief executive officer of the healthcare facility. So we'll go ahead and we'll take a break here, and then there will just be 1, 2, 3, 4, about 5 pages left of pharmacy operations.